What is America's biggest secret in the shadows? This is what we have always been told. The CIA is the guarantee of America's security. It collects intelligence all over the world, eliminates threats, shields against enemies. Today, however, one of the most powerful figures in the US government is calling the CIA a cancer. Steve Bannon, one of Donald Trump's closest aides, says they don't want a CIA anymore. We don't want our spies all over the world, he says, because we're already not safe. The Chinese are everywhere. The Russians are everywhere. The Iranians are everywhere. The CIA can't protect our secrets. We have nothing to hide anymore. So what do these words mean? Is there really a war against the CIA within the American state? Until now, we have always looked abroad for the CIA's shadowy operations, but what if the real war is taking place inside America itself? Is the CIA a security shield or a structure that is rotting America from within? And most importantly, how did this war start? The CIA was created after the Second World War as America's greatest shield. But over time, this shield turned into a boomerang, sometimes hitting enemies, sometimes turning back to hit its own people. During the Cold War, the CIA's biggest task was to stop the Soviet Union. To do this, they didn't just gather information. They overthrew governments, supported coups, fomented wars. In 1953, they overthrew the Mossadegh government in Iran. In 1973, they replaced Allende with Pinochet in Chile. These events, which went down in the history books, proved that the CIA was not only an intelligence service, but also a mechanism of global power. But the CIA's biggest scandals were not limited to foreign operations. When the Watergate scandal broke in the 1970s, it exposed the dirty dealings between the Nixon administration and the intelligence agencies. Agents used to spy on the president's rivals, illegal wiretaps, shadowy operations. All this began to undermine the CIA's credibility in the eyes of the public. And then, by the 2000s, this time the target was Iraq. The CIA claimed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. But after the war, it turned out that these weapons had never existed. This was one of the biggest mistakes in the history of American intelligence. A war that killed millions of people was built on false intelligence. In recent years, some of the criticism of the CIA has focused on how it has built a surveillance network against its own people. The documents leaked by Edward Snowden showed that the CIA and NSA monitored the phone calls, emails, and even internet searches of millions of Americans. Julian Assange's documents revealed that the US spied even on its allies. The idea that the CIA is working not only against America's enemies, but sometimes against its friends and even its own people, is being challenged more forcefully than ever. And now, Trump and his team claim the CIA is not just part of the state, it has become a state within a state. Underlying these claims is a much bigger tension. Does the American deep state really exist? And is the CIA the center of it? When Donald Trump entered the US presidential race in 2016, he claimed that the political and bureaucratic establishment in Washington was united against him. According to Trump, the White House, the Pentagon, and the intelligence agencies were controlled by a structure that acted independently of the leaders elected by the American people. In his own words, this was the deep state. But Trump's allegations were magnified by the events immediately after the 2016 elections. The CIA and the FBI published reports suggesting that Russia had interfered in the American elections. Moreover, these reports investigated possible links between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. Did the US intelligence agencies see their own president as a national security threat? As soon as Trump took office, he began purging the CIA and FBI of people who were not loyal to him. In 2017, he caused a major crisis by firing FBI Director James Comey. Comey's dismissal was interpreted as one of the clearest indicators that Trump had declared war on the intelligence agencies. The Trump camp defended this move as preventing intelligence agencies from conspiring against the president-elect. The purge of cliques within the CIA began at the same time. The Trump administration believed that intelligence was in the hands of traditional Washington elites, and that this structure was working to undermine it. Mike Pompeo, whom he brought in as the director of the CIA, took steps to purge the organization from within. But this fight against the deep state was never fully concluded during Trump's 4-year presidency. Trump openly expressed his distrust of the intelligence agencies, saying repeatedly, "They are working from the inside to bring me down." He even argued that the CIA was not serving America's real interests, and that it was beholden to globalist elites. But was Trump's biggest move to go so far as to completely dismantle the CIA? This is where Steve Bannon's statements come into play. Is "we don't want the CIA anymore" just populist rhetoric? Or is it a sign that the Trump camp really plans to radically change the intelligence system? And the real question is, could this struggle between the CIA and Trump reignite with the 2024 elections? Steve Bannon, one of Trump's closest strategists, has always been known for his harsh statements. But his recent statements carried a message that shook not only the political atmosphere in Washington, but also the American intelligence community. Bannon was clearly saying, "We no longer want to have spies all over the world. We don't want a CIA anymore." It was the first time there was such a clear challenge to the existence of the CIA. And why? According to Bannon, the CIA was unable to protect America. He even went further, arguing that the CIA was actually jeopardizing America's security. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, enemies were everywhere. Not only had the CIA failed to prevent this threat, but it had also become a cancer hiding from the American people. According to Bannon, the CIA was not a structure protecting national security, but an apparatus controlled by global elites in the deep state. These words resonated with Trumpist populists. Trump's supporters have long viewed the CIA with suspicion. They saw the traditional political establishment in Washington, the media, and the intelligence agencies as a status quo united against the people. Bannon's remarks have sharpened this view. But were these statements merely ideological rhetoric or part of Trump's strategy ahead of the 2024 elections? As he prepares for a second presidential term, Trump has not forgotten the clashes he had with the CIA and the FBI during his first term in office. This time, however, he is taking a more direct and tough approach. In 2016, he only used harsh rhetoric against the intelligence agencies, but his plan for 2024 may be more radical. In the immediate aftermath of Bannon's remarks, voices began to rise among Trump supporters calling for a restructuring of intelligence. Members of Trump's closest inner circle have discussed limiting or outright abolishing the CIA's powers. If Trump wins a second term, scenarios are on the table, including a complete purge of the old cliques within the CIA and the transfer of certain parts of intelligence to the Pentagon or private security firms. But can Trump really dismantle the CIA? Or would this spark an unprecedented civil war in America? Could this tension between Trump and the CIA turn into a power struggle unprecedented in American history? If Steve Bannon's remarks are not just political rhetoric, and if there really is a radical plan to dismantle the CIA, the question becomes inescapable. How will America's intelligence system function? Since 1947, the CIA has been the main body overseeing U.S. global intelligence gathering and covert operations. But Trump and his team believe that it has become out of control, protecting its own internal connections and global elites rather than the interests of the country. If the CIA is dismantled or its powers curtailed, how will America's security architecture take shape? In Trump's first term, there has been a remarkable change in the field of intelligence and security. Private security companies were given more authority. Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, proposed to Trump to replace the CIA with private intelligence networks. According to Prince's idea, the U.S. should collect intelligence through the private sector instead of through state-affiliated officers, and make its operations more flexible. This would allow it to act without the control of bureaucratic cliques and the deep state in Washington. Opponents, on the other hand, argue that it is a major security risk to allow private intelligence networks to operate outside state control and create a state within the state. Michael Flynn, one of Trump's biggest supporters, is a former defense intelligence chief and known for his distrust of the CIA. Flynn and others like him argue that the Pentagon should take more responsibility for intelligence. Currently, the CIA handles the bulk of foreign intelligence, while the Pentagon's military intelligence units focus on field operations. But Trump and his supporters believe that much of the CIA's work could be transferred to the Defense Department. But is it possible? Technically, the Pentagon has its own intelligence unit. But merging civilian and military intelligence could lead to a new power struggle within the US. If the Pentagon increases the powers of military intelligence, wouldn't it create another shadow government to replace the CIA? Some in Trump's team believe that abolishing the CIA altogether could lead to chaos. Instead, it is suggested that many of the CIA's powers be shifted to the NSA and the FBI. The NSA, National Security Agency, is already more powerful than the CIA in signals intelligence. The FBI could take over some of the CIA's duties in domestic espionage. This model would allow the CIA to continue gathering intelligence while breaking down its former influence. But there is a big problem here. How will the CIA's illegal or sensitive operations continue through these agencies? Would eliminating the CIA deal a serious blow to America's global intelligence network? Or is it Trump's ultimate trump card to upend the global order? It seems that if Trump and his team are really trying to dismantle the CIA, it would be a move that could radically change not only American intelligence, but also the global balance of power. And if the CIA is out of the picture, will America really be a safer country, or will it create a power vacuum in the intelligence world? Trump and his team are not just aiming for a leadership change in American politics. In their eyes, this is a battle to destroy the established order in Washington. The CIA is one of its most important bastions, and now those closest to Trump say it must be completely destroyed. If Trump wins the 2024 elections, he will not just criticize the CIA. He will move to limit its powers, stop some of its operations, and perhaps most radically, to dismantle the CIA altogether. Statements by Steve Bannon and others suggest that this is a preliminary step. However, no one knows exactly what the consequences of this move will be in the US. The CIA has always been a center of power within the state. Even as presidents have changed, the intelligence agencies have been able to maintain their long-term plans and act independently of presidents. If Trump does indeed move to weaken the CIA, it would mean not just a change of government, but a crisis of state. Because the CIA is not just about fighting enemies abroad. It is also a mechanism of power that decides who rises and who falls at home. And this is why the tension between Trump and the CIA is becoming a much bigger issue than a simple political disagreement. This is one of America's biggest internal power struggles. And it will determine not only Trump's future, but also the fate of the American intelligence system and the global order. Is America's most powerful intelligence organization against Trump and his team? Or is it the other way around? Is the real power struggle starting now?